All right, we're back, and so we have just returned from seeing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And we had a decently packed theater, I would say.
Yes, it was a decently packed theater.
Yeah, I mean, there were a good amount of people that showed up to this. I think we should talk about the previous Guardian movies before we talk about this one.
Well, first we gotta start off with the first one, as obvious, with Mr. Star-Lord himself getting captured by, Ravagers.
He gets captured. Well, he first encounters Korgoth,
Yeah.
who's Ronan's minion, and then of course he gets captured by the Ravagers pretty later on, because then he meets up with the others. They get thrown into the prison.
Yep.
But I will say this: prior to the release of the first Guardians, I had no idea who these characters were.
Yeah.
Probably because they were on the less popularity scale of Marvel.
Well, in terms of the comic books, yeah, but they were like on the you could say maybe underrated.
They were more on the obscure side. Like, if you're really into comics, you knew who these characters were. But if you didn't know who they were, you were going to get lost.
Yeah.
But I would say the first movie was a huge success, and it gave people new characters.
To like, yeah.
And they had their own style, and they had their own look that made them distinctive.
Yeah.
Which, of course, James Gunn perfected to a degree. But I would say the first Guardians, it's a good introduction to the characters.
Yep.
It's a decent movie, but I don't think it's my favorite of the Marvel movies.
Well, now with... in terms of the Marvels, I thought we were going to go with, just the Guardians, but in terms of Marvels, I thought it was still high up there, though, in terms of being the first movie. Still a solid foundation for those guys, and there was a lot of funny moments, and that one led up to the ultimate Thanos.
Yeah, but I think where I'm coming from is when the trailers for Guardians 1 came out back in 2014, they marketed it as a comedy, and that was very off-putting to me. But the actual movie, it has funny scenes, but there's also some serious scenes to balance that. And I think James Gunn, he wanted these characters to be funny because he knew that people like funny, but they also like colorful adventure movies.
Yep.
And I would say for an introduction, I mean, the comedy outweighs the story aspects. The story's not bad, and we do, get to know who all these characters are, and we see them interact. And by the end, they're going to go on these big adventures.
Yeah. And
of course, the Thanos scenes are very well done.
Yeah.
Because that was all leading up to the Infinity War and what was coming.
Yep.
But on a rewatch, it's like, if I was to make this more space epic, or like something along the lines of maybe we can have our funny bits, but also our seriousness, which is something that I feel the sequels improved on, then I would probably like it a little more than I did.
And which will lead to the next Guardians movie, Volume 2.
Guardians 2, I actually like a lot more than the first one, because I found it was more story-driven. It's like James Gunn, okay, I introduced the characters in the first movie. We have all our funny bits, but also the serious stuff. Yeah. With the second one, there was funny stuff, namely, Taser Face!
Yeah, no one took him seriously, not even Rocket or anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, he should have had a different, more interesting, scary name, like, what's a scary name you could have come up with for him?
Don't put me on the spot like that, because if you put me on the spot like that, it's going to end up like that, like what he was just saying. Even though he probably thought about it for a long time and not get through.
I'd have to think it out. But Guardians 2 was more story-driven, which is something I really liked about it. Like, there were a lot of serious scenes, especially the interactions between the characters. There's a lot of character interaction that I really enjoyed, and it got me invested in what was going on. Like, I wanted to see where it was going to go, what was going to happen to them, and it just had me hooked all the way through. It had its funny bits, yes, but for the most part, it's like James Gunn, he's going more story-driven with number 2, and I would say he got that quite well. And then, of course, we saw the characters in Infinity War and Endgame playing their parts. They were in a little bit of Love and Thunder, but that technically was not their movie.
No, it was like a little bit of a cameo, a little bit, you could say, since Thor was, hitched a ride with them, basically.
Yeah, and then they quickly wrapped that up so that Thor can go on his adventure.
Yep. And then Guardians could be, go on their adventures without Thor involvement.
Yeah, which leads us to this third entry, and it has some interesting backstory behind it, is that James Gunn was originally not going to make this movie because Disney fired him over his controversial tweets. that he made?
I haven't read those tweets myself, but I think that was, if I recall, that was the issue. So now he's going from Marvel, which was, this last film, to now DC.
But before we get into that, so they fired him from Guardians 3 originally because of those tweets, but they couldn't find a replacement, so now he came back for this one.
Yep.
Because they realized, oh, he did it so well with the first two, if we do it someone else, it will not get us the same kind of success.
No.
Which is why they brought him back for one last movie before he goes to DC, of course, to do his reboot.
Yep.
And so yeah, what did you think of Guardians 3?
Well, Guardians 3 did really well in terms of a different story aspect, because the first two films, the first one was about getting the Guardians together and a little bit of Peter's background. Volume 2 was diving more into Peter's Quill background.
Yes.
This time around, it's about Rocket and his background, basically.
Oh, definitely.
Even though he was basically, you could say, unconscious or in a coma for a good half of the movie.
Yeah, something you'll sort of notice when watching this is that Rocket Raccoon, he's got his scenes, but throughout much of the movie, he's like unconscious or he's dying, as they say.
Yeah, dying. I call it, in this state of coma, even though he is dying, but he's basically like out of action for the first half or a good chunk of the movie before before the reawakening or the revival, I should say.
Yep. As for me, I actually really enjoyed this one, and I thought this was, I would say 2 is the best of the trilogy, but this one I would say is the second best movie of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Because this movie, it's kind of hard to describe it, but basically it's a more serious, more story-driven. It's got its funny bits, but this one felt the most story-driven when compared to the other Guardian movies.
Well, you could sort of say this was like a farewell, because at the end it was a farewell to the old Guardians, and now
they're gonna basically have all these B squads, and we'll see where some of these characters go.
Yeah, well, now that there's the new Guardians, which Raccoon is now in charge of, basically. Hence, probably why they probably went to more Rocket story origin, since he's going to be now in charge of the new Guardians, which has some unique faces, to say the least.
It does, and so if we're gonna kind of spoil this movie, I mean, we'll talk about moments and stuff that we liked, stuff that we didn't like. So let's dive right into that. So the movie begins, and they are on Nowhere, which many of you know as the detached celestial head.
Yeah.
And they've basically made it kind of a retirement area almost.
You could almost call it like a safe haven, sort of speak.
Yeah, they're setting up a sign in alien language with an English translation on the bottom.
Yep.
And some of the alien languages in this movie, they had the lines,
Yep.
But some of them look like Braille. If you've ever seen the Braille language, that's for blind people with all the dots and stuff. There was a little bit of that in there.
Yep.
But yeah, they're on Nowhere, and basically they've been living there ever since the events of Endgame.
Yeah.
And the little adventures they had with Thor.
Yep. Also, real quickly, it did bring up Rocket's. The start of his flashback, basically, when he was just a little baby.
Yeah, they established in this movie that Rocket Raccoon, he's obviously from Earth. I don't think they said which wildlife preserve he was from.
Well, I think they said in the little tag at the back
I saw North America, but I didn't catch what national preserve he came from.
I believe either you have to rewatch it again, or it most likely will be one of those things where when it comes out on DVD and all that sort of stuff, you have to pause it real quickly.
I liked this movie enough that I'm definitely going to go back and see it a second time.
Yeah, you just have to really if you're going to see it, you have to really quickly scan, besides reading the North America part of it, where exactly it is, because they did kind of specify as any other name tags that you see, either at a pet store or a zoo of where it's from, what region, where all that sort of stuff. Basically.
I probably have to check that, but
yeah,
I wouldn't think raccoons are an endangered species if he came from a wildlife preserve, because they're pretty common.
Well, yeah, raccoons are pretty common, but I'm just saying, the highest, the mad scientist.
The high evolutionary is the villain, but we'll get into that.
Yep. he kind of grabbed a group of raccoons and used it as experiments. Basically,
he saw him as the special one, you could say, and then you see the hand reach out and he takes him.
Here, they're the one that out of all the baby raccoons that were running away and frightened, that was the one that kind of was like, stood his ground even though he was like scared.
Yeah, and a lot of these flashbacks, we see the experiments that Rocket went through.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out where have I seen that in before? Because I know I've seen that before.
Yep.
I forget. Oh wait, I know what it reminded me of. You know how in the X-Men movies we saw flashbacks of Wolverine's experimentation?
Oh yeah, so to speak. Like
it reminded me of that. Like, what if James Gunn directed X-Men, but he applied the Wolverine flashbacks to Rocket in a way?
Sort of. I mean, you can almost say it's almost mirroring a little bit, or maybe he took the idea off of it. The reason you could probably see the idea of while the experiment was happening, then all of a sudden he gets a little bit pissed off, which we'll get into later as to why he got pissed off.
Well, maybe we should talk about the flashback stuff and the villain before we get into anything else. But so they experiment on him, and they make him like super smart with all the cybernetic enhancements and the genetic stuff that they're doing.
Yep.
And of course, Rocket Raccoon, he makes friends with other animals that got abducted by Earth. Like he makes friends with an otter named Lila, I think it was.
She called herself Lila. Each of the three creatures that he became really close in, the prison buddies, you could say.
Yeah, and then you see this wheelchair-bound walrus.
Yep, which was known as Teeth.
It sounded like Teeth, but I think his name was Teeth.
Yeah, Teeth or something.
But it sounded like Teeth, and the reason why he called himself that was because of his tusks.
Well, yeah, the tusk, that were pointing out the unique. Well, he called it, unique teeth compared to all the other creatures, basically.
Yeah, but we all know it's tusks.
Yeah, we all know it's tusk. Yeah.
And then there was this rabbit. Her name sounded like Floral or whatever.
Floor, yeah, because she was lying on the floor.
Yeah, and she was like this spider-legged, masked experiment thing. It's kind of hard to describe.
I can imagine they probably did something really bad with the mouth, and so that's why they kind of covered her face, basically. I would imagine. So, and then you have Rocket for his, dreams of getting everyone out of there and flying,
into the space, into the universe. And so the High Evolutionary, he's experimenting on all these animals because he's trying to create a perfect society.
That's how he says it. Who knows? That's how he says it. And of course, his experiments went wrong because every time he kind of humanoids creatures.
Yeah. He puts this like tortoise in one of the it's not pods. It's like a Bacta tank almost.
A chamber, basically.
Yeah, chamber. And so he puts it in there, and the tortoise it looks like a Teenage Mutant Ninja tortoise.
Yeah.
Just without the ninja gear.
Yep, but then he gets enraged really quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you ever saw in Spider-Man when one of the scientists is like, oh, we tested on rats, but they had these negative effects, violence, aggression, and insanity.
Yep.
It would have been kind of funny if they put one of the animals in there, it becomes aggressive, grabs one of the scientists by the neck, and then says, back to formula. Kind of like what Norman Osborn said.
Oh yeah. But of course, Rocket. I was about to say raccoon, but he's not. He's not called raccoon. He is a. He's.
Well, he doesn't think he's a raccoon until he discovers the truth
that he is a raccoon.
That was a good payoff, actually. I will not lie.
It was. It's like, well, now you figure out you're a raccoon, even though everyone knew that you were a raccoon, but it had to be slapped in the face, basically.
And didn't the High Evolutionary tell you this early on? But I guess he was too focused on what he was doing.
Yeah, he was too focused on. But anyways, though, back to the whole thing. So the High Evolutionist, he was like, "Oh yeah, we've been failing every time. We're not too sure why." Rocket's like, "Well, because you have this liquid thing that's going to their body, which is making them enrage."
Yeah, and I just kind of realize now what trope that it feels like. You know how in movies there's that one smart guy in the room who's smarter than everybody else, and he knows the solution to it?
Yep.
There's a scene in the original Stargate where they're having trouble trying to translate the hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
And so Daniel Jackson, he comes into the room and course corrects them, and he reveals what the real translation is.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I've seen it in other movies where scientists, they're always that one smart guy in the room and they know it better than anyone else.
Yeah.
It was like that with Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah. But of course, some of them went down this other route, 2 routes, and this one took the other route in terms of that one particular mad scientist, or the scientist who, after he got one up basically by basically his own experiment,
Yeah, and
he got crazy.
Yeah, someone should have told the high evolutionary that making animals hyper intelligent never ends well. Like, someone should show this guy the Planet of the Apes movies, and it's like hyper intelligence on animals never ends well.
Well, I mean, he technically had his chance because obviously he observed Earth and made a counter Earth.
Yeah, he was like trying to make this habitable world that was like Earth but with anthropomorphic animals.
Yep.
And the society they have, like the animal society on this counter Earth, it feels very 1950s, like maybe a mix with the 60s almost.
Yep, it reflected that basically way a lot.
Yeah, it's got this very like it's got the way you see the houses and stuff. The suburbs, they look really nice, really clean, really well lawn cut. I would definitely move into this neighborhood if I could.
Yep, but that's like in the way back in the story. But of course, again, high evolution was like, how the frick did you know that we had to take that out? Because now they're all happy and all that sort of stuff. They don't have negative emotions.
I mean, you're the one who made your animal pet super smart here. I mean, do you not see this as a threat to your plans and stuff?
He saw it as, again, he was thinking like he's an inferior species based on how he looked, basically. He went off of looks or, something of the fact that, well, he's just this little guy. How can he be such high intelligence, basically, compared to me?
I mean, he's the one that experimented on him. He should know that you did this, and sooner or later, Rocket's going to revolt against you, man.
Well, it was more... Well, I don't think he would have if he was nice, still act nice to him, basically.
He kind of did, but you could tell he was still crazy and a bit, abusive with these guys.
A little bit, yeah. It was a little bit, but then he got way too crazy after after he showed Rocket that his adjustment worked, basically.
Yeah.
So then he was like, I'm just going to take out your brain, see what you know, and then transmit it to something else so then he can create that perfect society, basically.
Oh, yeah, I think I can remember that now. And so he says this, and he's trying to get all his friends out, but of course he kills the Otter character, and then Rocket, he's all sad, and he tries to fight back.
Which was successful.
But he ends up getting his friends killed in the process.
Yep, because security guards came in, were shooting, and much like stormtroopers trying to hit a primary, a protagonist, they miss.
Yeah, and then he gets out, he gets on the ship and flies away.
Well, yeah. Well, they miss Rocket, but they still hit their targets in terms of others.
Yeah. Actually, come to think of it, character gets experimented on, then revolts, escapes, and then flies off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the opening scene in The Force Unleashed 2, where Starkiller's being experimented on, but he revolts against Darth Vader, and then he fights his way through the stormtroopers and Kamino, then gets on a ship and gets away.
Yep.
I just kind of realized that now.
It was very similar to that one, except with him fighting his way out. Except Star-Lord fought his way out while Rocket was running away to get out, basically. Besides the first bit of shooting, then he started to run or flee, gets on a ship.
I don't think Star-Lord was there when
Not Star-Lord,
escaped.
but no, I'm saying like Rocket. He gets on the ship and flew away.
Yeah, kind of like what Star-Lord did in the first movie, where he's fighting back, gets on the ship, and flies away. Is that what you were going at?
Oh, no, I was saying, not Star-Lord, I was talking of Starkiller.
Okay, yeah. We're getting the two mixed up.
Yeah, Starkiller fought his way out of Kamino and flies away, whereas Rocket flees after the shoot-off, then he flees, gets on a ship, and takes off.
Yeah, it was like that. But the flashback scenes I actually liked because we were going into Rocket's origin story, the friendships he made, all the stuff he went through, and how he came to hate this person, the High Evolutionary.
Yep.
And then, obviously, we don't see how he met up with Groot. We don't see the adventures that they went on together before they met the Guardians. Maybe they'll make a side thing or something. I don't know.
Maybe, who knows? Yeah, but in the meantime, while his flashbacks were kind of happening to him, Adam comes in to nowhere because
I kind of had an issue with this guy. Because Adam Warlock, they had been setting him up since Volume 2, and obviously he was going to come at some point in these movies. The way they kind of portrayed him, though, and I think mostly comes down to the actor. The actor that plays him, he seriously came off as like a person from the Harry Potter movies, just with a coat of yellow paint.
Oh.
Because the actor playing him, he seriously played this part like it could belong in the Harry Potter movies for some reason.
You mean like a guy from Slytherin or something like that?
I don't think Slytherin, just like a Hogwarts student you would encounter in the halls.
Mm.
He played it like that, but then the dynamic he has with his mother, I don't think I'm not saying this is a ripoff, but the dynamic they kind of had, it gave me Fairy Godmother, Prince Charming vibes from Shrek 2.
Oh, you mean like the kind of like the entitled one a little bit, but then he has to learn on he's kind of learning by fire of reality, basically.
Yeah, and then the mother's like kind of giving him some
too much, like.
It wasn't necessarily a direct ripoff, but it kind of reminded me of that almost. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, the actor playing him, I know he's been in other stuff, but I forget. I have to look up his filmography.
Yeah, he basically was the one that injected something into Rocket or damaged Rocket enough to where he was in the dying state, basically.
Yeah, but I think my issue with his performance is that he just played it too much like if he was on the Harry Potter movies, And he was just too youthful, because I've seen pictures of Adam Warlock. Yeah. If you look at a picture of him, he doesn't look very youthful. He looks more like in his 30s, I would say.
Well, again, like they stated in the movie, is that he came out premature.
Yeah, he did. And, I mean, I don't know, it's just the way that the actor was playing him, it just... I don't know. I just didn't like his performance that much.
Yeah, if
it's not a bad performance. He's doing pretty good with the material that he's given. It's just, I kind of wonder if Henry Cavill had played this part, would it have been better?
I know he played Superman, Witcher, and stuff like that. I don't know with the whole gold thing on him per se.
I would not have minded if they did that. I would have liked Henry Cavill in this role a lot more than the actor they got. Because at least Henry Cavill, they could give him more acting chops, and he would have he'd probably act a little more than he did as Superman. And I know people really liked him as Superman, but I did have some issues with that performance too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for all the build-up they had of this guy, they really should have gotten someone else.
I would say he acted more of I'm trying to think of the guy's name from The Boys.
Carl Urban. Or the guy that plays Homelander.
Yep, Homelander. The guy that he's like the he's like the teenage version of Homelander, basically.
Then, maybe they should have gotten him. And I have not seen The Boys by any means, but maybe they should have gotten the guy that plays Homelander.
Because I think Adam Warlock was acting like the teenage version of Homelander, basically.
Well, I've not seen The Boys, so I'll let you speak on that one.
Oh no, I'm just saying because Homelander, he's like the other versions of Superman, but if he were to be a bad guy per se.
That would be but I've not seen The Boys, but I've heard maybe he's a bit of a rough character. But
he's a rough character, and he kind of acts entitled and stuff like that. Kind of a little bit childish too from time to time as well. But he is really powerful, and his arrogance does kind of portray itself out. Adam is basically kind of like that, but in a teenage form.
Yeah, that would be the best, most accurate way to describe this performance. Is I think they should have just gotten someone who didn't look so youthful. Yeah. They should have gotten someone who could have been not too old, but looks like in their 30s or something like that.
Yeah.
Just not too young. Again, that was my issue with it.
I didn't mind it though. For me, I didn't mind it. I thought he played a pretty good job for being a Superman, another version of Superman. But even though he's not Superman, but again, this is a youthful kind of still not like not so he's kind of slow to pick up on reality basically.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, he was kind of Superman power levels almost.
Yeah,
but they still kind of beat him in spots, really.
They still, because he's premature. He's still in that teenage phase, so his fighting style is not up to par, basically.
Maybe they'll give him more time to grow in the future movies, but
probably I would imagine so. Like, as time grows on, he's probably gonna get better with his combat ability and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think the actor playing him, he probably needs to like move away from that what he's doing now and give us some good character development.
Well, I mean, I recognize him in other films and other like.
I know he's been in stuff. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, no. But he is a noticeable, I'm trying to remember his name, but I know him from, like, a few...
his name was Will Poulter, I believe.
I know I recognize him from, like, a few other movies and TV shows and other, like, media, other media entertainments, basically.
I'd have to look up his filmography, but, I mean... Yeah, it just kind of had issues with his performance. It wasn't a bad performance. I just feel like they should have gotten someone else.
So, of course, they were like you could say they were treated as like the Suicide Squad, basically, in terms, because High Evolutionists was like, oh, they're the backup plan. I have my own plans going. I know they're going to fail epically.
He knows the Sovereign are going to fail.
Yeah, he said it. Like, he said it too. Like even though he was telling them, go get me, Rocket, basically, or he called him by.
Oh yeah, he's the one that hires them to go get Rocket, but of course it doesn't work out.
Well, no, he told them to try it again. While he's telling them to try again, some people are like, "You're not gonna trust into those guys, right?" And he's like, "Oh heck no, they're the backup plan. I know what they're going for."
Yeah, because they want revenge on him after he stole the batteries in Volume 2.
Yep.
And they do kind of get that, because I seriously thought Rocket was gonna die in this movie. And I heard rumors before this movie that they were thinking of killing someone off, which thankfully does not happen.
Well, it came close like at least three separate occasions.
Yeah, I mean, they could have taken the risk and killed someone off, but they decided not to.
Yeah, it was like 3 to 5 separate occasions that they nearly killed off a well-known character in the film.
Yeah, don't forget what the third one was, but they nearly kill Rocket.
Yep.
You think Peter Quill's gonna die towards the end. And who was the third one?
It was during the invasion of the kind of like, you could say like that, was it the eyeball or like that, something that you kind of like, was like those skin thing or whatever. They were trying to capture Rocket's like information and stuff like that.
I'm trying to remember that part.
It was like the first sequence of trying to revive him or something like that, or trying to gather his intel, or like trying to see his like one part of the experimentations and stuff like that. But then like Nebula got shot in the back. Drax got shot like twice.
Oh, was it Drax?
Drax got shot in the front and the back.
Yeah,
and he was like, oh, frig, we gotta run. Like he was nearly like dead basically.
Oh, I think that's the third one. Okay.
That was the third one. Then Nebula got shot and she was bleeding pretty badly.
Yeah, but she got very twisty in this one. And it makes sense because she's cybernetic.
Yep. But yeah, Drax was the third one.
Yeah, I mean, they could have taken the risk of killing someone off, but I guess really they just didn't want to be like do anything too controversial, so they showed some restraint. I'm pretty happy that Gunn showed some restraints.
Yep.
He could have taken the risk, but he killed off Yondu in Volume 2, and I figured, well, maybe he doesn't want to do it again. Maybe we should talk about the bad guy, the High Evolutionary, because you had something to say about this guy.
He was a lower tier villain. I'm just gonna say that. For as much as the trailers try to portray him and stuff like that, he did went off on a whimper, and he was to me like, he's just a guy that, if you look at him in a game or something like that, you can almost call him like a tier V villain or something like that.
I mean, the Marvel movies have gotten a lot of criticism for their villains being not so amazing or great.
Yeah.
I would argue differently. Like, there's some villains that I feel are weak, And then there's some where I'm like, they're good enough that they fit in with the plot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good examples that I can think of. There's also some weaker villains that I can think of.
Well, the reason why I'm kind of saying this a little bit is because in Guardians Volume 1, you had
Ronan the Accuser,
who was, again, kind of like a right-hand, at the time, a right-hand man
to Thanos. And he wanted to destroy Xandar because he feels that justice was not served in the name of his Kree people.
Yep.
Because of that peace treaty.
But he was tough. Then they went up a notch by
introducing Ego
and the Celestials, basically.
Yeah.
And a planetary level type of, enemy. So that's another step up. But then they kind of went down, basically, and you have this mad scientist with telekinesis ability who basically died by each member of the Guardians.
Yeah, they all gang up on him towards the end, and they beat him into submission, and then they tear his face off, which they compare to RoboCop for some reason. And I know in the original RoboCop, Peter Weller's face was attached to the cybernetic body.
Yeah.
But I did not get RoboCop vibes from this guy.
Yeah, it's just like I'm just like, man, you went out on a whimper, basically. And plus his subordinates too, his other people below him, they were also like, when Peter was like, everyone was telling him it's a trap, and it's like, well, if I know it's a trap, it's not really a trap.
Yeah,
and it played out like that way, and people were like, don't you know it was a trap? And it's like, I knew it was a trap. That's why I came prepared. And it's like, well, yeah.
I guess really he's the kind of villain who's so egotistical that he wants everything to go his way.
Yep.
But other people are making suggestions, and then he's telling them, "Hey, be quiet over there. We're following my plan."
Oh yeah, and that kind of backfired at him at the end, basically.
Yeah,
it finally did, basically, because the one right hand man of him was telling him every single time, calm your temper, we need to do this, we need to do that, and he just blatantly ignored her every single time.
I guess I don't really mind that portrayal of a very stubborn, mad scientist kind of guy.
Yep.
Who wants everything to go his way, but these other people are making suggestions, and then eventually they revolt against him.
Yep, because eventually when she said something and he's like, there is no God, that's why I stepped in. And that is very mad scientist.
Yeah, that basically is a mad scientist thing to say.
Yeah.
But I would think, wouldn't these alien races worship, other deities, wouldn't they? Because they use a lot of the terms that humans use.
Yes, but...
Because I would think other races out throughout the universe, they'd have, different concepts,
Yeah, but if a creature knows that, hey, this guy created you, you're probably obeying him like a god, basically.
But yeah, I mean, the actor that plays the High Evolutionary, he plays this mad scientist kind of crazed guy. It's not psychopath, but it's just very 1950s mad scientist crazy.
Yeah, he was very mad scientist crazy. Again, the one quote kind of basically the one quote, even though not all scientists says it, not all mad scientists says it, but they it's very similar. They all kind of almost say very similar phrasing of that word. There is no God, that's why I stepped in. Or, something very similar of the sort.
Yeah, that is something a mad scientist would say, and I've probably heard it in other stuff.
You probably do heard it, but again, it's a different phrasing or different how they say it per se.
Yeah, and I mean, the way this character was written, I guess I didn't have too much of an issue with it, but I just didn't find the performance all that energetic or electric, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, and of course, like you saying, as soon as he said that, his other subordinates were ready to shoot him, gun him down, basically.
Or maybe, if he really wanted to enact his plan, which he could have gone, all genocidal on that counter-Earth. Or he could have,
he blew up the planet.
He blew up the planet? Oh, yeah, he was ripping it all apart and stuff.
Blowing up from the inside, basically, or kind of, Or,
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I kind of have a hard time remembering these movies.
Yeah, he, the moment that one of his, was it he heard from the pig robot,
I kind of want to talk about those robot guys a bit because he has these like two henchmen or hench animals, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
They're a pig and some kind of bird creature with like cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah.
They look like they would be enemies Duke Nukem would fight. Because in Duke Nukem, there's these like pig cops and there's these other cybernetic stuff that he fights. But I was also kind of getting Doom vibes from those guys.
I don't know. The pig one kind of reminded me of if it was kind of reminded me of Star Fox a little bit. You know.
I'm sure I saw something.
You know, and it was like the pig from Star Wolf, basically. And there's like future other games. There, I think it was Assault, where pig, forgot. I think it's either pig or something to do with pig. Anyways, he became like a cybernetic, or became part of like this. Eventually became part of like a cybernetic like being, whatever. It was supposed to make everything kind of like unified. It was like one of those like these like a hive mind trying to take over the universe, basically trying to make their own perfect universe, basically.
I never played a lot of Star Fox, so you probably know more about that than I do.
I played mainly Star Fox 64. I did play Star Fox Commander on the DS, so I did play my fair share of Star Fox. Star Fox Assault, I played a little bit of. I did see gameplays from, through other, adaptations or through other, like entertainments.
Yeah.
Like YouTube and stuff like that. But, in that perspective in Assault, Pig like kind of had like this robotic or like symbiotic or kind of like look to him, basically. And I'm thinking like, that looks, I'm like, the pig in this film, I was like, man, that almost looks like Piggy if he was like, if we brought him in live action and he kind of looks like that robotic, kind of like mechanized bad guy.
But they seriously look like enemies out of Doom. Like, they look like the kind of cybernetic demons from Doom, almost. Because there's a hallway fight towards there's one really awesome hallway fight set to, like, Beastie Boys.
Oh, yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, that scene, it was like the scene in Kingsman, where one of the characters is, like, the camera's still focusing on him, and he's, like, fighting all these people in a parody of the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And so that was a nice scene. There's a few enemies. There were enemies in there that looked like a combination of the Mancubus and the Arachnotrons from Doom.
Yeah. Although another thing too, even though I've never played this game, I've seen clips of it, and this game was supposed to have a revival of its second part, like the sequel, like a few years back, but they delayed it too long. I'm not too sure if they're gonna eventually release it or if that's just a scrap one. I think it was like
Beyond Good and Evil.
Beyond Good and Evil.
I don't know if the sequel's ever gonna come out. It's like Half-Life 3. It might not ever come out.
Yeah, but that pig also, I was saying, like, that robotic pig kind of also reminds me of that pig too. A little bit. If, again, the pig were cybernetic and evil.
They were pretty cool to look at, I will not lie.
They were, yeah. But of course, the moment the pig was like, "Oh, I got Rocket," basically, or his number tag, basically.
Yeah,
because they were always referenced Rocket by his number tag.
Yeah, the little serial number that they gave him.
The serial number, almost like like every time we hear the clone troopers going by their serial number or stuff like that, or when they hear their serial number, they're like, "I haven't heard that since I was made. What the heck? Why are you calling me by that?"
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think what else is there I can talk about with the villain, because you didn't like him too much. I thought he was okay for what he was. I just think he should have had more like energetic things with his performance, Like if he was going to go all crazy mad scientist, and I've seen mad scientist characters where they're so energetic or they're so sinister, and this guy, he didn't quite find the energetic or sinister. He played crazy, just not the kind of crazy I would have wanted. Like, I would have liked a scene maybe where he gets on and like a little microphone or something. He's like, "Attention! This is the High Evolutionary, the Chief of Security. I want the Guardians of the Galaxy found, shoot to kill, and I want you to destroy all my creations." Like, I would have wanted something like that.
He kind of did say that, except he said, "Keep Rocket alive."
Yeah, he wanted him alive because he was the one that he prized the most.
Yeah, because he kind of did went off like that. He was like, killed all those people except for 89 number.
Yeah, and he got very wide-eyed, like, in the movie, too, which is something a crazed mad scientist would do.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the villain, I felt like he was very standard, but not the worst kind of villain, I would say. Like,
Not the worst, but it was, like, again, a very downgrade villain, basically. Like, he still had his, again, like, menacing, kind of like, oh, I'm still strong and stuff like that, but it's like, you're not as strong as the previous villains and the Guardians have faced. And it kind of showed, basically, even though they went through some tough patches and stuff like that,
I mean,
obstacles and stuff like that, but they were able to find their way out of it, a lot quicker than some of the previous ones.
Yeah, and, I mean, I'm just trying to say, yeah, they did showcase his powers. He wasn't necessarily all-powerful.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I didn't mind him so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not asking for, like, I'm not asking every villain in this franchise to be as smartly written as Thanos or just, as good as other villains from non-Marvel movies.
No.
I can get a decent villain every now and then, and I can think of others that are pretty weak when compared to the High Evolutionary. But
Yeah.
I didn't mind him so much.
Yeah, but I was just like thinking, like, man, you were building up each villain kept getting stronger and stronger. They were strong, and then it was stronger.
I think
they just took a dip.
I think maybe James Gunn kind of ran out of ideas for strong villains, and I'm not too well versed in the comics.
Yeah.
So I don't know what other strong villains there are.
Yeah.
But maybe I think this was okay. I've gotten big, but now I've kind of run out of ideas. I'll do someone smaller scale.
Especially with Thanos gone and a few other bigger villains gone, so it's like, well, what's next?
Oh, that's another thing too, because you pointed this out in the theater that he's trying to create the perfect society, but it's almost like conquering.
Yep, because he stated Peter was like, I'm not gonna try to stand aside while this maniac trying to conquer the universe or stuff like that. Yeah. And then he went, I'm not trying to conquer, I'm trying to perfect it. I'm like, isn't that just the same way as conquering, except you're just trying to do it your other way?
Yeah, and I agreed with you on that, and I kind of wanted a scene where the Guardians don't necessarily kill this guy or beat him in the fight. They teleport him away to some area, but he's stripped away of all his high-tech equipment and stuff, like a desolate world maybe, where he can't have access to anything. And then Kang the Conqueror shows up, and he takes out the High Evolutionary, and he's like, well, I can't have too many conquerors in my turf.
Yeah.
Because he's the next big bad coming up.
Yeah.
I would have wanted a scene of Kang showing up, taking out the High Evolutionary, but I guess they just didn't think of that.
I'm not too sure about that one, but I'm just like, yeah. It's like, you may try to make it sound less menacing by saying perfection, but you're still trying to conquer, basically.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of strange about the Counter-Earth he creates, we see this Statue of Liberty, where it's him and an animal that he's holding on his arm.
Yep.
I got 2001 Planet of the Apes vibes from that.
Oh yeah.
Because towards the end of that movie, you see the Lincoln Memorial, but it's not Abraham Lincoln. It's an ape version of Abraham Lincoln towards the end.
Oh yeah, that was the second one. Oh, they also showed talking about the Statue of Liberty. There was another.
The first Planet of the Apes, they showed the destroyed Statue of Liberty, which didn't happen here, but I kind of feel like that was inspired by Planet of the Apes, what they did with the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, and of course, that one's I think it was only a creature or something like that, and a torch or something like that. Very much like the Statue of Liberty, holding a book and then a torch, basically.
Yeah, very much like that. And in fact, the first scene we see of the Guardians landing on the Counter-Earth, they land in the middle of the suburb, but surprisingly do not destroy the homes, but if they did dent them, those people better have good insurance.
Yeah, but of course they were like, we mean you no harm. And the first thing Drax did was hit a kid with a basketball.
Yeah, and then they start attacking, and I'm like, well, that escalated quickly.
Well, it's like, I would not do that. You're not helping the case, Drax.
Yeah, but the way that scene was shot and executed, it felt like, first contact with aliens in the 1950s or early or somewhere in the 60s. But also reminded me of an animated film called Planet 51, where The Rock plays an astronaut that lands on this planet full of aliens, and they look like they came out of the 50s or mostly the 50s.
Yep.
And as soon as he plants the flag, he looks around, and he runs away in terror. That doesn't happen here, but it reminded me of that.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's a good example to use or not, but it really reminded me of that.
Yep. And of course, another storyline too, a little bit, is I guess Peter Quill also is trying to get over the fact that, or he's trying to get through the fact that, he's trying to get Gamora back, but Gamora was like...
Yeah, because they established at the end of Endgame that Gamora went missing after the final battle.
Yep.
And as it turns out, she became the leader of the Ravagers.
Or became a big member of the Ravager. I don't know if she was the leader. I don't know if she was...
I think it was the leader, but it also could have been a member. I'd have to watch it again.
Because they still had like other like big, big head members were still there.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, of course, she's like to Peter. I don't know who this Gamora was that you interacted with. I am completely different from her. I'm a variant from another timeline. But I'm surprised the TVA didn't show up to try and like get this variant and course correct, But then again, they're probably dealing with Kang at the moment.
Probably, and also too, again, I guess because this one too, if we remember from that whole Endgame sort of sequence, it was 2014, in that when she kind of was there basically, so just right before she met the Guardians, basically. This is the old Nebula, the old Gamora when they were still servitude of Thanos, basically.
Yeah, I think they need to explore that timeline in a What If episode, and if they are planning that, I will definitely watch it.
But Peter was trying to make her remember. I was like, Peter, you can't just try to force a memory on something that predates your first encounterment.
Unless he put her through a total recall-like situation where he hooks her up to a device and puts the memories in her brain.
Yeah.
But he never thinks to do that. But then again, that would be too much.
It would be too much, and plus there'll be other things as well that would probably be like plot, that would be like way too, yeah.
Yeah, hang on a sec, folks. Just one quick thing to check. But yeah, I mean, the interactions they had together, those I actually liked, because it was nice to see Peter, he's interacting with this Gamora, he's trying to get her to remember, and of course, they kind of hint maybe they'll get back together towards the end, but the good thing they didn't go ahead with that.
No, I think it was the Peter finally accepting the fact that this is not your Gamora anymore, this is a different Gamora. Maybe you can just be friends, and that's about it.
Yeah, but I'm surprised Peter didn't travel the universe to try and figure out a way how we could possibly get the real Gamora back,
Who knows? Although I thought that Nebula would have stepped in a little bit as well. I was like, wait, Peter and Nebula?
They're not going to do that. No one wants to see that.
Yeah, shit.
But then,
but then they acted more like brothers and sister, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, but there's a scene that I know you had to walk out to go to the bathroom when this came on.
Yep.
But there's a scene where we see them talking in the silentness of space.
Yep.
And I liked that space was silent for the most part, but you got sheer noises from time to time.
Well, yeah, I think he was listening to music, and then he turned off the music. Then it was silent.
Then he talks to her, but then and it's a nice moment. But then the characters are like, "This is an open line. We can hear everything you're saying, and it's making us uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And he couldn't figure out which colored button was the one to make a private line or something. Yep. He couldn't figure that out, or they didn't tell him ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Well, no, I'm gonna probably see it again. Later. But so I'll definitely try to watch that part. But yeah, that probably would have been funny.
Yeah. There was also there was one moment with Gamora where she gets all wide-eyed and she's arguing with the characters. I forget where it is in the movie, but the performance it comes pretty close to Neytiri from Avatar because it's the same actress.
Yeah.
She gets all wide-eyed. She's making these faces that look like Neytiri.
Oh yeah.
And it's I'm surprised James Gunn didn't call out Zoe Saldana. I think that's how you say your name. Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't call her out on set and was like, Zoe, I think your performance is getting close to Neytiri. Can we do another take? But I guess that's the one he went with.
Yeah, not too sure. Although, I don't know, I'm not too sure if it was the sequence of her pushing Peter because she was getting sick and tired of him, trying to make forcefully remember or something like that, something that she can't remember or something like that. But then Nebula stepped in, is like, bro, I know we're family, but he's also family as well.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of good character interaction in this movie. The dynamic between all the Guardians is back.
Yep.
And James Gunn, he writes it exactly how you think it would be.
Yeah.
And it's nice that all three of these movies have been consistent with their dynamics and the way the characters interact with each other.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then they have, after everything that everyone kind of went through, basically, kind of finding almost themselves, basically, so to speak. So, like
to a degree, they kind of found themselves. Like Peter, he does eventually accept that this Gamora is not the same, and then he decides, I want to go back to Earth because maybe I have some family there.
Yeah, and try to reconcile or finally meet up with them, basically.
Yeah, and he's also kind of feeling like sad throughout the movie because we see him in the bar scene where he's a bit drunk about Gamora. And
about people that he had lost, which was
it was his mother he lost, and then he lost Yondu, and then there was
Mother.
Those are the main two.
And then he also mentioned Gamora, or his Gamora.
Yes.
Even though Manta was like, well, Gamora isn't dead. Well, she's dead to us.
Yeah, and then and then she mentions like his grandpa if he's back on Earth, and he's like, well, my grandpa would probably be 90 at this point.
And she's like, what's the point with that? Don't you want to meet up with him if he's still alive? And then Peter was like, well, he may be dead. And I'm like, that's a fair point.
This was a line that I felt really bothered by in the theater. Because he says, like, people live up to the age of 50, and then Mantis is panicking about that. I'm like, okay, here's the thing. Some people probably won't get past the age of 50. Not everybody, though, because there's a lot of people that still make it to old age.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, Peter, you're not from the 16th century. You're from 1980. The 1980s.
He comes from the 1980s, and I'm not a child of the 1980s, so I cannot speak on what the life expectancy was. But if Peter were to go back to Earth now, he would find that life expectancy has improved dramatically.
Well, I think that, it kept improving. I'm pretty sure even from the 80s standards, it was still really good, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, he came back, and of course his grandpa's alive still. So he's probably, like you said, in his 90s.
Yeah, and I mean,
or
like
80s, 90s, yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, but that was the line that really bothered me, because it's like, did no one tell Peter at a young age, like, there are people that live past the age of 50 and make it up to their 90s, man. There's even people that have made it to age 100.
He was abducted when he was like 8 years old. They probably expected him to learn that in school at some point.
Or you think someone could have told them? I don't know. Maybe they didn't think of it.
Well,
that was a line that just kind of bothered me.
Plus, you also had the fact that he just saw his mother probably at a younger age.
Yeah, and Ego was the one that put the tumor in her head.
But still, she died at what age? Like 30, 40 or something like that.
I don't quite remember what the age was, but I think you're pretty close.
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to talk about with this one was the color grading of this one. The other two Guardians movies were like very colorful, we could say.
Yep.
And that's because it was all vibrant. It was all like very light. It played to the lighthearted nature of these movies, but also with the serious scenes. This one kind of desaturated the colors a bit. Like they were kind of toned down a bit, but not too much to where everything was gray.
Yeah.
Because there was still color in this movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think it was that they did that because we're giving in some more serious stuff.
Yep, and it's becoming more of a farewell, too.
Yeah, but I didn't mind the color grading so much. I felt it played with the overall tone that the movie was going for.
Yep.
So at least James Gunn's got the color, but he's not going too dark to the point where everything's so gray.
Yep.
Which is something Zack Snyder did with his movies. He made everything gray and desaturated the colors.
Yeah. So you had Peter going back home, basically to Earth, to reconcile or to meet up with his family again. You have Mantis, who she's trying to learn about herself more, basically. So she's going off on her adventures, basically.
Yeah, and she does these with her emotion powers because it's established she can understand the emotions of people or make them feel something or make them fall asleep.
Yep.
With the way they handle her emotion powers in this movie when she's making people do stuff.
Yep.
It's kind of like she learned Jedi mind tricks, but did it by touching people.
Yep, and also kind of like doing other things too, kind of like forcing them to do whatever or however they feel, basically.
Yeah, and she tricked this one guy into loving Drax, which was kind of an awkward scene.
it was kind of an awkward. It was a little bit of awkwardness, a little bit, but it was like one of those things where it's like, oh, you're very hopeful that you may get the one. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and Drax kind of was like, you're playing that, really?
I'm surprised, like, no one's tried to get Drax and Mantis together, but I'm pretty sure that's something the fan fiction shippers will do.
They were. It was kind of like, I think that movie was kind of playing into that per se. Though they kind of somewhat hinted at the end. They were kind of playing along with it during the film,
Even though
they hinted at that at the end of the film too.
But they establish in part 2 that like they're not attracted to each other. It's more like a friendship, really.
I don't know. The ending of the film kind of hinted at something more between the two. That's just me.
Well, I don't know if they'll go ahead with that angle because Marvel's kind of busy with other stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Mantis, they're kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of like being mean to her almost. Because
Well-
like they say, oh, we only have you around so you can do this.
That was Nebula.
Yeah, Nebula said that, but then Drax is like making his comments, and it's like, whoa, you don't think she'll find a way to use her powers against you guys?
Well, Drax is like, I'm not stupid.
And then she makes him forget that.
Yeah, but then he was like, you're lucky that I was just using my strength and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know if he completely forgot that.
Oh, I forgot to talk about this one part where she like uses her powers on this blue alien and makes him dance.
Yep.
I kind of went crazy with that guy almost because he seriously looked like Will Smith.
Well, yeah. And she did that with a lot of people, though, in that sequence. She made one act like a cat, one dances, and one go ape crap, crazy.
I don't remember what that character was, but yeah, the blue alien looked an awful lot like Will Smith. But I know it's not him, but it seriously looked like him.
But Nebula and Mantis had an argument, basically, and that kind of spewed over to the kids a little bit as well, which made them scared.
Oh yeah, there were these kidnapped kids in cages, and what did the High Evolutionary want them for again?
I have no idea. Probably still part of, like, the experimentation and stuff like that for his evolution towards that perfection.
Whatever he was trying to do, it was very sinister and
Yeah.
actually kind of dark. I liked that.
Yeah, but of course the kids were scared about the two arguing, but then Drax was like, you're scaring them.
And yeah, and then he cheers them up by dancing like a robot. Beep, boop, boop, beep, beep, beep.
Even though it was his impersonation of a monkey, but, But
Maybe-
then he spoke their language. And then Nebula and Mantis, Nebula more so, was like, how the heck did you know how to speak to their language? Or I think both of them were saying that.
Yeah, and,
But mainly Nebula.
yeah, that felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, where did you learn this language?
It's like, how do you learn that? Oh, I was able to speak it. And you didn't tell us this before? You never asked. I'm like,
Well, maybe he did learn it, and there's probably stuff about him that they don't know.
yeah.
There's probably stuff with these characters they're not telling each other. There's
Yeah.
secrets they keep from each other.
Yeah.
But
it kind of was like, okay, he's great with kids, basically. He may be one of those big, bulky guys, but he's great with kids.
yeah, and Dave Bautista played that really well with Drax. I will not
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, big guy, but great with kids. So like Nebula said, he was more of a father figure.
I was going to mention this, though, with the kids in the cages, but it reminded me a lot of a deleted scene from Monsters Incorporated. This was never in the movie, but there's a deleted scene where Sully, he's going to save Boo from Mr. Water News and
Yep.
Randall before they suck out her screams with
Oh,
the
yeah?
scream extractor.
Yeah.
There's a deleted scene where he goes into this room and he sees all these cages because Mr. Water News was going to kidnap all the kids and put them in these cages and then extract them. And a lot of people have said that should have been in the movie because that would have been really dark. But
Yeah.
maybe they're like, well, we don't want to scare the parents and the kids too much.
That would have been a little bit on the darker side, that's for sure.
But with the kids in the cages, it reminded me a lot of that deleted scene. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that must have been a Disney edition right there. I don't know.
Yeah, but still, either way though. So Drax was like kind of like you could say kind of like the helpful, like for the kids basically. So he stayed back and nowhere
Yes.
for that department. Nebula stayed back as well.
And Mantis stayed back in nowhere as well as Groot.
Well, she said she was going to explore something, so she
I
made.
think I missed that line.
So yeah, she went off, but I mean, she'd probably come back to nowhere from time to time. But she was going to go off on her adventures. But Drax stayed back because Nebula asked Drax to stay back, and Nebula was going to be like, become like marshal of that nowhere, basically.
I did like the line where Groot's like, "I love all of you guys."
Oh yeah,
I loved that because that was Vin Diesel's
Diesel.
natural voice.
Yeah, no, Vin Diesel. I was like, oh, Vin actually came in and actually say something besides "I am Groot."
Yeah, and I kind of want to see where that goes. Are they going to teach him more words
Yeah.
in future installments? Because I really want to see Vin Diesel play this part with like more words than "I am Groot."
Yeah. He also said "We are Groot" too at the first Guardians.
Yeah, and I mean Groot's considered one of his best roles. He played Groot an awful lot like the Iron Giant.
Yeah.
To a point.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where he like gets angry and goes big when all the people in the 1950s town are attacking.
Oh yeah, that was like
It kind of reminded me of the Iron Giant when the Iron Giant gets mad and then goes ballistic on the U.S. Army.
Well, yeah, because I think what was it? I think Nebula told him, "Go kaiju."
I don't remember what the line was.
He's like, "Groot, kaiju," or like kaiju mode, and he went giant, basically, kind of like, again like Godzilla.
Well, I kind of saw it more like the Iron Giant, where he like gets mad and then he's like, "Wah!"
Well, yeah, no, but they would tell him to go kaiju, which is like, again, giant monster, basically.
Oh yeah, because the kaiju movies were big in the 60s and the 50s.
Yep, they're big in the 60s, 50s, where it's like, big, scary monster. So so kaiju, big, scary, tree monster. And of course, everyone runs away.
Yeah, and it's nice, to see Groot's character development throughout all these movies.
Yeah.
It was really nice, actually.
But Groot goes with, Rocket, as of course, but Rocket was like, but wait, we're just being disbanded? That's it? And it's like, well, because you're in charge now, Rocket, of the new Guardians.
Actually, there was a scene with Rocket that I wanted to talk about. It's where he's going in to rescue, he sees all the animals in their cages.
Yeah.
And it reminds him so much of the friends he lost. It's a really well done sequence because there's no talking and the emotions get the point across.
Yeah.
I love that kind of visual storytelling in film. And so he sees all these baby raccoons and he's like, you can almost read his face. And he's like, I don't want anyone else to end up like me, so I'm going to save you guys.
Yeah.
And he wanted that with the other animals, and that was really well done. I loved that scene.
Yep.
It was one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yep.
Oh, the space station. I want to talk about the space station they go to meet up with Nathan Fillion's character. It was the Orgo station, or what was it called?
You talk about the one when they first, the first part where they had to get in that space suits and everything else like that, and then disguise themselves. That was the one I was trying to mention earlier.
Yeah, I think the space station was called the Orgo station or whatever.
That station where they first try to get information for Rocket, basically. Extract. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this ring-like structure with organic material growing all over it.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of yellow fluid leaking out and stuff.
Yep.
You know what that reminded me of?
What?
The necromorphs from Dead Space. It had this very like necromorph vibe to it without being scary. Because if you ever played the Dead Space games, there's a ton of sets or moments where you'll see all this like growth material, this sludgy material growing all over the place.
Yeah, but I think it was the bigger. I forgot what was the high evolutionists called them or something like that. But those creatures that came out with like robotic and like mixtures of like other creatures. Those are kind of like the necromorphs, basically.
The cybernetic pig and the cybernetic bird creature?
No, it was the ones before that. It was the one where there was like this monstrosity, basically. It was like a combination of like squid or like octopus and like a man bear and all that sort of stuff.
Are you talking about the squid octopus like monsters they fought towards the end?
Not those giant 3 ones, no. But it was the one where it had like 2 legs, the stature up, and it had like tentacles kind of growing off of it.
Oh, yeah, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't get necromorph vibes. I got more Doom vibes out of that one.
Doom, necromorphs, it was like those type of things, basically, where it's just like, ooh.
Yeah, but when I saw the yellow fluid leaking out of this space station, it kind of reminded me of some necromorphs have like infected yellow flesh that's like explosive.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the only way you can kill them. You gotta blow that up before they get you.
Yep.
It reminded me heavily of that. And then there's the people in the station, they're wearing these like really bulgy organic spacesuits.
Yeah.
They kind of looked like, what's the name of them? I know they're from The Last of Us. They looked like these really big fungus monsters from The Last of Us.
Yeah.
I forget what the monsters' names are.
Oh yeah, but of course they were able to extract the information, get out of there. But then of course, Adam and basically his mom were there to find out where they went off to, basically.
Yeah, and there's this scene where he's like, "We'll teach them our business," and then he like zaps the guy, and
he
then
zaps the guy to death, and it's like, not like that. Well, how do you want me to do it? I told you to show business. Well, how else we're gonna show him? Well, now he's dead. We can ask the little guy.
They didn't talk this one out before they did it.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of really good visuals in this
Yeah.
movie. There were so many, in fact, that I just was like, wow, the aesthetic was just so well done. And that's something that's actually been, I can give compliments to all the Guardians films, is that their visual style, there's a really nice aesthetic to them, and I've always enjoyed the way they were visually presented.
Yeah.
They were colorful, they were just like really attractive to look at. We get the same thing here.
Yeah.
And some people who saw the first Guardians said it was their Star Wars, but I would argue the action scenes and visuals, they're inspired by Star Wars, but not direct rip-offs of it.
Not completely, no. But I was also I was about to mention the new Guardians, though, that we get to see at the end.
Yeah, because this movie, it's essentially, like we said, a farewell of sorts, where they're basically filtering out the team, and they're all kind of like...
Going their separate ways.
Although we may see them again in Avengers 5 and Avengers 6.
Probably, because they did mention in the second epilogue scene
that Star-Lord will return, and they present it as the legendary Star-Lord.
Yep.
So he's finally earned that rank.
Yep, the legendary. So it's like, and I can imagine him to be like, I tried to retire, that's why I'm back on Earth. And it's like, well, you gotta unretire now because we got a bigger issue at hand.
We got Kang on the way.
Probably, yeah. And then, but the new Guardians, which is...
It's Rocket Raccoon, Groot, who's starting to resemble his comic counterpart a little more.
Yep. Then
he can camouflage really well, I will not lie.
Then you had...
there was Adam Warlock, one of the kids.
One of the kid that I think the one that got the most highlight out of the kids.
Yeah.
Apparently, she has telekinesis powers.
Yeah, and then you got.
Then you also have the dog.
Yeah, you got the Russian. We should talk about the Russian dog a bit.
The Russian dog and the with the yeah.
Yeah, I forget his name, but he was he was like one of Yondu's most loyal men.
Yep. So and he's taking Yondu's that kind of like
yeah, he's taking the Mohawk, which controls the arrow, and he struggles to learn it. But eventually he does get the hang of it. He may still need some work, but he's getting the hang of it.
I think at that point when we meet the new Guardians that he's getting the hang of it now. But Yondu reminded him, use your heart.
Yeah, when we see him, because there were people that kind of went, oh, because they didn't know he was going to be in the movie.
Yep.
I kind of like got this vibe from seeing Yondu again. He was like, it's kind of like Force Ghost vibes almost.
Yeah.
Just without the blue filter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Han kind of did that with Kylo Ren.
Han kind of... Oh, yeah, like in Episode 7, he tried to get him back.
Episode 9.
Oh, yeah. That scene, too.
Yeah.
Where he's like, you don't have to do this, give up the lightsaber, go back to the light. And I mean, we're using that as an example, but there you go. But yeah, it gave me Force Ghost vibes, that scene.
Yep.
And it was actually pretty well done, I will not lie.
Yep, and then he was able to... got the hang of it, basically.
Yeah.
And then he finally called the dog a good dog.
Yeah, because there was that bad dog scenario where the dog has telekinesis, and he gets a little jealous of that and goes, bad dog! And the dog doesn't like it.
Well, of course, because it's, it's a dog. Every time you say, a dog is a bad dog, they're going to go... Yeah. Until you finally tell it, it's a good dog. And they're like, oh, yay.
Yeah, and the Russian dog kind of fascinated me, because, like, we saw this dog in the other movies. Yeah. He must have been stuck on nowhere the whole time.
Yeah, and the dog always mentioned, like, he told me he was a bad dog. And it was like a trope throughout the film. And it's like, can you please tell it it's not a bad dog? I'm not going to lied when it's a bad dog, and they're like, oh, it's gonna kill us.
Yeah, and they have a translator for it as a caller so they can understand it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't have a backup of those for like the anthropomorphic animals in the town, you know?
Although the dog's backstory, the Soviet dog, her backstory was they thought I died or something like that.
Yeah, they shot her up. The Soviets shot her up into space, and she would die a fiery death. But no, she must have like got sucked through a wormhole or something and ended up on nowhere.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Where it's like I think it was like it was kind of it's like their own take a little bit of the Soviets, kind of like launching stuff, animals into space or something like that.
And of course, when we see the new Guardians, they play "Come and Get Your Love" to
at
give
the
you
end,
to give you the good vibes.
To kind of give you like nostalgic vibes from the first introduction of the Guardians.
The first movie, yeah. And the soundtrack for this one, I didn't mind the soundtrack so much. They had some pretty good tracks because the Guardians films have always been consistent with that. Like, what songs can we put in here that people are really gonna like?
Yep, well, because at first it was 70s, and then it got to the 80s, and then
this one was kind of a mix of 90s
and then 2000s at the end.
Yeah, but not too much. They didn't emphasize on that too much.
They didn't emphasize that it was at the end where, because again, Raccoon was going to the end, and the final playlist was 2000s.
Yeah, there's that. But the ending sequences, like we see this photo montage of all the characters in the credits because this is their farewell.
Yep.
And it was nice to see screenshots from most of the movies. The only ones we did not get a screenshot of are Endgame and Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yep.
And then there were a few screenshots from the holiday special, which I have not seen and probably will not watch.
Yeah.
Because I will say this about the Guardians holiday special. It's kind of like when a lot of the shows we grew up watching had their designated holiday specials.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And Marvel's doing that in this day and age.
Yep. And now, but also, so the end credits brought up that, basically.
Yeah, we get to see this nice montage of all the characters, their highlights and their adventures. And of course, the first post-credit was Rocket forming his little team.
Or the introduction of his team, basically, which is, again, Rocket, Groot, one of Yondu's most loyal guy who's taking the Mohawk, forgot his name.
Yeah, and then one of the kids.
One of the kids who has telekinesis powers.
I think
Adam
Adam was
Warlock,
in there.
and the dog.
Mm-hmm. And then the second post-credit was Peter trying to reconcile with his grandfather.
Yep.
Which, honestly, they could have cut that and it would not have changed anything.
Although I thought they should have added a little bit more than just Peter was like, I don't know why you're mowing the lawn, but I could have just mowed the lawn.
And he's like, well, this is my property. I'll do what I want.
And Peter was like, well, isn't it kind of weird when people see a 90-year-old man mowing the lawn when there's like a 40-some-year-old man just sitting there?
Mm.
And he could have been the one doing it? It's like, nah, it's not that weird. It's like, it's actually kind of is.
I probably need to see this again because I did enjoy it enough to remember some of that dialogue.
And I will see it again later.
Yeah, because you're actually going to see it again because...
later on tonight, yeah.
Yeah, so this movie clearly has made us want to go see it again because I would say I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, it was a really good film, though, nonetheless.
There were a ton of good moments. Visually and aesthetically, it was well done.
Yep.
The villain I didn't mind too much. The soundtrack was pretty good.
Yep.
And for the most part, this was a very story-driven kind of movie, and it had its funny bits. But
a lot of emotional bits.
Yeah, that was actually something I liked, was the emotional scenes.
Yep.
By the way, the scene where Rocket Raccoon, he's like almost dying or something like that.
He did die, but then of course Peter was like doing the traditional.
He was doing the. What do they call it again?
CPR. Or something like that.
CPR. Why did I forget that?
Yeah, no, it's like the CPR, and it's like he's just pushing down on it, and of course Rocket was about to walk to the afterlife with his.
With his friends, yeah. You see him in this like animal heaven. It looks like.
Yep, and then, but Layla was like, but not yet.
Not yet. You still have some stuff to do, and it kind of reminded me of like some near-death sequences or death scenes in like other movies and other media where the characters are going to die or are dead,
and they're about to accept it, but then it's like, you still have a role to play though.
Yeah, because in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and I know I shouldn't be using that as an example, but I'm using it anyway. There's a scene where like Megatron kills Sam with his blaster cannon, and they try to revive him with CPR. It doesn't work. He somehow ends up in robot heaven, and then the Primes, the legendary 13 Primes, are like, Optimus is our last descendant. We need you to go back and revive him with the Matrix of Leadership, which they do. And then there's a scene in God of War 2 where Kratos is almost going to die from the Kraken squeezing him. Yeah. And then Gaia, taking the form of Kratos' wife, tells him, you still have a purpose. You still need to go kill Zeus. Yeah. And he eventually comes back and beats the Kraken.
I also mentioned Harry Potter, where he is like talking with Dumbledore, and Dumbledore's like, you can, there's two paths you can go, but you still have a role to play.
Yeah, that sequence played out an awful lot like those scenes, and I know there's probably others, but it played out an awful lot like those.
Yeah.
So I will not deny that there were tropes, there were things that felt familiar, but I still felt satisfied with the end result of what we got.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if this is the last time we're going to see these people together going on their space adventures, I'd say it was well worth it.
Yep, it was quite an adventure with the Guardians, but it had to come to an end, and now the new Guardians will take their place.
And even though, like, James Gunn and pretty much everyone else has said they're done, like, there's talk of a potential fourth Guardians, but we don't know if that's going to play out. Because Marvel's kind of focusing on some other stuff at the moment.
Yep.
Because they got the Marvels coming out in November, which we got a trailer for, by the way. Yep. And pretty cautious about that one, because I know that's the next movie.
Yep, you got the Marvels, yep, and then you had to figure out how to kind of like navigate the Kang,
Yeah, how they're going to navigate the controversy surrounding Kang, because I liked the way Kang was in Ant-Man 3, and I liked the actor playing him, but there's been a lot of controversy lately surrounding him, and it's like, are they going to recast him, or are they going to keep him?
Yeah,
or... And the answer is, I don't know.
Or is it going to be one of those, they have to take a different route, basically, like either recast... or find a way to get rid of him and try to present like another bigger threat.
Maybe they'll go with Galactus or Doctor Doom if Kang doesn't work out.
Yeah, but then you have to figure out a way then to say how to get rid of Kang then.
They'll probably come up with some like weak explanation or something, or maybe Kang's still plotting on the side while they get a recast going.
I was about to say more on the line of trying to get Kang for one more movie, but in that movie, he dies by the hand of, let's say, like, Doctor Doom or something like that. And it's kind of like one of those, like, oh, there's someone more sinister in the back,
Well, I know that
in the shadows.
I know that Avengers 5 is called Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, and there's talk of him showing up in Secret Wars.
Yep.
But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And, I mean... whatever Marvel decides to do, because I know they've recasted before, they can do it again.
Yeah, again, it's kind of hard to do that, though, I would say, when he's already been kind of, like, brought up at least a couple times, or at least in a sequence around the Ant-Man, where multiple or a lot of variants were there, so it's like, yeah, that's going to be hard to do. It's kind of like how, like the clones, basically, with,
Well, they used the same actor for the clones.
Exactly. So it's like, it's kind of hard to replace somebody when they play multiple,
Yeah, but at least the actor playing the clones, it was Tamara Morrison, I think that's how you say the guy's name. I don't know how to say it properly, but at least, he's a decent, well-rounded guy who doesn't have any issues with people.
Well, yeah, for sure, yeah. I'm just saying, like, when you have a character, though, or an actor playing multiple characters, or at least, his face is always showing up in multiple places, it's kind of hard to replace that.
Yeah, that's true. And it'll be kind of interesting to see what they do with the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, but I think they'll either stick to their guns, or they will figure out something down the road.
Yeah.
We'll never know. We'll see what happens. Oh, actually, the ending sequence with the Guardians where they're all dancing around and celebrating, did you get Return of the Jedi vibes out of that?
It was kind of like that, like the celebratory end, basically.
Yeah, because this is the trilogy ender, so we got all these characters coming together, having one last celebration before they all go their separate ways.
Well, some of them are dancing and some of them are going their separate ways. So, like, we see some of, like, while, Nowhere's dancing, you had Gamora returning to the Ravagers, Peter finding his grandfather.
Drax and Mantis are staying behind on Nowhere.
Well, Drax was like saying his farewell to Mantis, and Mantis walking away with the three
tentacled monster things.
Yep.
And Nebula will probably go on her adventures, and then Groot. I'm not sure what they're going to do with them.
Groot's with Rocket. He's part of the new,
Oh yeah.
the new Guardian. Nebula said that she was going to stay back, and she needed Drax to stay back. So those two are going to be back on Nowhere, basically.
Yeah, there's a ton of details I may need to see once I see this again. But
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, we had a good time watching this, and I would say for a Phase 5 film, this was really well done.
Yep.
Especially coming from James Gunn himself. This is his last adventure with Marvel before he goes to DC and directs the Superman reboot, because he's going to. And he'll have a say in the TV shows and some other stuff.
Yep.
But for the most part, I'd say he delivered. I liked the action. I liked the visuals. The acting was pretty good from everybody all around. Everybody turned in a good performance. Mm-hmm. And even though I may have picked on a few things or maybe had a few issues with this movie, this was a pretty enjoyable experience for me. Mm-hmm. And I would say you would say the same thing too?
Yep, it was a really enjoyable experience.
It was. Now the question of, is this better than Ant-Man 3? Because I know a lot of people did not like Ant-Man 3, but I actually didn't think it was that bad when we did our video on it.
It wasn't that bad either, but I mean, I will still, with the fact to say Guardians Volume 3 was probably still better than Ant-Man.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is a step up from Ant-Man 3, and I know Ant-Man 3 had its issues, had its problems, but I, didn't think it was that bad of a movie, because I can think of much worse in the MCU.
Yep.
But with Guardians 3, it was a very enjoyable experience. It's consistent with the other Guardians movies. It's still James Gunn's vision. Yep. Like, there was no studio interference. This is still his vision and what he wanted with these characters. Yep. And I'd say he delivered something, because if this really is the last adventure, then I would say he delivered.
Yep. It's a farewell.
Yeah, and it's a good thing he did it, because there was a rumor that Taika Waititi was going to do this originally when James Gunn got fired. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, good thing they didn't hire him, because he's not my favorite amongst the Marvel directors. Especially what he did with Ragnarok, and I'm still not over that. Oh, jeez.
But everyone liked Ragnarok, though.
Yeah, but I've dug a hole with that I'll never get out of.
Yeah.
I just hated Ragnarok because of what they did to Planet Hulk, and the fact it could have been so much more, but it was wasted potential. It really was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we had a good time, and I would definitely watch this again, because this really was, it was really enjoyable, it was well done, it was well made. It was very story-driven, which is what I really liked about it. It had its humorous bits on the side, which I did chuckle at a few.
Yeah.
And maybe there was some stuff about it that it kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
But I had a good time.
Yeah.
I had a good time, and I mean, if they stay the course with this kind of, if they just stay the course and keep me invested in what's going on, I'll stick around. I'm probably going to stick around for Avengers 5 and 6, because I'm not giving up on this franchise yet.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing some holes, but we'll see if they're able to pluck them out.
I mean, I kind of felt some fatigue during Phase 4 a bit, but Ant-Man 3 got me re-energized enough that I think my fatigue, maybe it's still there, but it's being kind of quelled for the moment.
Yeah.
Because, like, with Phase 4, I mean, I liked Black Widow. I liked Shang-Chi a lot more than Black Widow.
Shang-Chi I liked a lot.
And then you didn't like Black Widow as much as I did.
I mean, it was a decent, solid film, but it was on the lower scale.
And for me, it was, it's not up on the high points, but it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi, I would say, was one of the high points.
Yep.
And then Eternals was one of the lower points.
Yep.
Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm still kind of got some mixed feelings on that one.
See, I thought that was a really good film, especially with the reintroductions to the other Spider-Mans.
I mean, yeah, it was a celebration of all things Spider-Man on film up at that point.
Yep.
And I mean, I still got some mixed feelings on it though.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange 2, I still enjoy.
Oh yeah, that one.
And then Thor 4, I mean, I kind of liked it, but even I'm thinking about it a little more. But I still kind of liked it for what it was.
Oh, you got the mixture of colors though, like the bright and colorful to the gray, basically.
Well, that I didn't
The
mind.
change of contrast, like so quickly.
Well, that I didn't mind in Thor 4, because the darkened stuff still felt colorful enough that it worked.
Yep.
I think by the time Black Panther 2 came out, that's when I started feeling some fatigue, you know? Because I just didn't think it was that remarkable of a movie, although you thought it was solid. But Ant-Man 3 was the one that got me a little re-energized, because Phase 4, as you said, was the aftermath of Endgame.
Yep.
And stuff that was still happening. It had its moments, it had some bright spots and high points.
Yep.
But Phase 5, because the TV stuff still hasn't come out yet.
Yep.
But for the most part, I would say I've been enjoying Phase 5 for the most part, and I'm not completely fatigued. I do want to see where this franchise goes.
Yeah, well,
Especially with Avengers 5 and 6.
But how long can they keep it up, though? That's the thing, though. Before the Marvel, I almost say that fatigue starts to kick in more.
Well, if before the fatigue kicks in, at least use Doctor Doom, use Galactus, and then once you use those guys, then you can wrap it up. Because I want to see Doctor Doom and Galactus show up in this franchise.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of want to wonder how they're going to handle the X-Men, because they've mentioned the X-Men,
Yeah.
but we still don't know when they're going to show up.
They're
And
eventually
no,
going to show up.
Wolverine's appearance in Deadpool 3 doesn't count. I need an official appearance from these characters.
Hey, you never know. Maybe they may jump into something, and Deadpool and Wolverine may end up somewhere. You never know.
Well, yeah, but they need to recast. They need to get a different Wolverine for this cinematic universe, because Hugh Jackman can't do it forever. And even though he said he was done by the time Logan came out, clearly they made an offer with Deadpool 3, and he's like, well, I need to still do this while I still can.
Oh, they can. Plus, Ryan Reynolds and Logan,
Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman,
Yeah,
good
Hugh
combo.
Jackman, yeah.
We'll see how
Hugh
that...
Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, those two got that dynamic right there.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes with Deadpool 3.
Yeah.
One other thing I kind of wanted to mention about Guardians 3 before we wrap this up, because I did enjoy this movie. It's 2 hours, 30 minutes, but it felt like 3 or very close to 3.
I would say close to 3. I didn't feel exactly 3, but it did felt long.
Yeah, it was long, but I was not bored watching it. Like, I was very invested in what was happening.
Yeah.
And at least James Gunn, he knows how to write an interesting story.
Yep.
And I just did not feel bored watching this movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I was starting to think, okay, this is getting a little long, but I'm not bored.
Yep.
I was still invested by what was happening, that I enjoyed this enough for what it was.
Yep.
And in terms of like good trilogy cappers, we've had some good ones here and there, but this one I think can join the ranks of good trilogy trappers.
Yeah.
Why did I say trappers? I said cappers.
Oh, cappers. Oh.
Yeah, not the. It's not up there with like the greatest trilogy endings, but it was still very serviceable, entertaining, and good enough that this was one of those third movies that feels like a good way to close off a trilogy.
Yep, that's for sure.
Like, if I had to name some of the great trilogy cappers, I can think of Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Star Wars, The Return of the Jedi, Dark Knight Rises, War for the Planet of the Apes. Those are some of the main ones I can think of.
What about Revenge of the Sith in terms of the prequels? Are we going to separate originals and prequels for Star Wars?
I would say Revenge of the Sith was a pretty good way to close off the prequel trilogy, because that one I enjoyed a lot.
I would rank the Revenge of the Sith as probably my favorite movie. I was debating for a while between Empire Strikes Back and Revenge of the Sith, but I'm now leaning more towards Revenge of the Sith.
For me, it was Empire Strikes Back, because it's the one I watched the most and loved the most.
Yep.
But yeah, Revenge of the Sith was a pretty good trilogy capper for the prequels. I can't say the same thing for the sequel trilogy, because Rise of Skywalker was... That's not an ending. It's a fake ending. At least I thought it was a fake ending. And oh geez, they dropped the ball on episode 8, but I'm not going to go into that any further.
Then they tried to repair as much as they could in episode 9, but
It didn't work out.
not a whole lot.
But yeah, I would say like this is a pretty good way to close off the Guardians trilogy of this set of characters. I don't know for certain if they're going to make a fourth film, because you never know what Marvel will do.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're focusing on some other stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
Like the Marvels, I'm very cautious about it. I might go see it out of curiosity, but I'm just... See, I didn't like Captain Marvel, and Ms. Marvel was a very frustrating watch.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like this will either be frustrating or bad, but we'll see what happens when it comes out.
Yeah.
But that's not till November, because it's a long ways away, and I think there's a ton of drama and reshoots going on with it that they're trying to fix the movie.
Yeah.
But we'll see where it goes. And then Captain America 4 is on the way, which that one has me interested because they're bringing back characters from the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, okay, we're not doing a Hulk sequel, but we're going to bring these characters back.
And then, of course, not for a while, at least since we were speaking about a show that's not going to be out for a while, another movie, and I did send you the trailer about this one, or a teaser, I should say, of the next Godzilla vs. Kong, the new Empire.
That I'm actually excited about because I want the MonsterVerse to continue. It's probably one of my favorite cinematic universes.
Yeah.
But it's nice that it's continuing. They haven't revealed too much about it, but there's some rumors I've heard about it, like Space Godzilla or Biollante could be the villain of that.
Well, you had the orangutan monster in the back sitting on the throne, basically.
Yeah, whatever that is.
I think that may be the new the new antagonist for the new Empire, which apparently some people may have speculated that he may have some electric, like thunderous power, basically.
Yeah, because I've seen fan art of a King Kong monster using electrical powers, because I know one of the Japanese movies did use it.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of see where that goes, but I am excited to see that one.
Yeah. Of course, again, with the orangutan sitting on the throne, and there's bones everywhere in front of them, including what looked like a Godzilla and Kong.
It was their skulls.
It was their skulls,
we'll see what happens. Yeah. And then as for Marvel, they got the Thunderbolts coming out, which is their Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see how that plays out. And then you got the Blade reboot, which will close off Phase 5.
Good.
I probably need to watch the old Blade movies before I see that, but I can see that happening by next year, because it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, I would say go watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you really enjoyed the other two movies, I would say this is consistent with them, this delivers, and you get exactly what you want, which is an entertaining Marvel spectacle.
Yep.
Despite some of the problems it has, namely the villain being kind of standard and some performances being kind of to me at places, I still, I just had a good time with this.
Yeah.
And I think most people are having a good time with this because I've heard really good ratings all across the board for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure, yeah.
It's like people who disliked Ant-Man 3, you'll probably like this one a lot more than Ant-Man 3.
Yep, that's for sure.
But I didn't hate Ant-Man 3 as much as other people did, despite its issues, but, it is what it is. These Marvel movies are extremely subjective, and everyone's going to have a different perspective and opinion on them. Mm-hmm. And I would say my opinion is the franchise is very hit and miss, and Volume 3 is definitely going to be in one of their hits category. Because I did have a good time with it.
Oh, yeah. Although in terms of box office, though, right now, Super Mario is still hitting it up in the box office.
Yeah, and it hit $1 billion worldwide, and by the way, regarding that short video, I know we had more to say on it, but due to our condensed time, we just had to, say what we could. And it was an experiment, and I think we may have succeeded, but I know we had more to say.
There's a lot more to say, yeah, that's for sure.
Because after we did the video, I discovered there was way more to its development that I did not know beforehand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why didn't I research this? I don't know. But that's just one-time experiment, I guess.
And we'll see if the Super Mario movie starts to, catch up to the likes of the Avatar, in terms of its box office success.
Oh, I don't think it'll hit as high as Avatar 2 or the first Avatar.
We'll see. And Puss in Boots was also in that category as well, so we'll see how the Super Mario movie, comes into play.
We'll kind of see what happens, but I don't know. But there is a cinematic universe in the works for Nintendo, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, if it does go that route, though...
They're talking about it. They want to do it.
Yeah.
They want to compete with Marvel. It's very clear to me they want to do that.
It could be successful if they play their cards right.
They might just. But anyway, that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Just go see it. We had a good time. You'll probably have a good time too. So, we'll see you next time.
Yeah.